veteran physician recruiter with over 20 years experience applying this trade. And I want to know from him some of the lesser spoken about topics around physician recruiting, what works, what doesn't work, some of the things people are maybe uncomfortable to speak about. So, hello, Kevin.
Hello, hello. It's funny. When we talked before about the structure and what we're going to talk about, the first thing that comes to mind is, and this is going to be tough for recruiters to hear, is physicians recruit physicians, not recruiters, right? Recruiters help arrange physician conversations and relay the process and stuff like that. So if you don't have physicians engaged in your recruitment process, it's probably going to be a little bit harder to be successful, right? So sorry, recruiters are important. I love them. I've been one for a long time. But physicians recruit physicians.
Why is that?
Because at the end of the day, it's like anything else. They want to know what the role is like, right? They want to know what it's like to be a physician in your organization. And, someone with HR training that's an expert in recruiting doesn't have that expertise. And, when an engineer recruits, there is usually being recruited by another engineer, right? So it's peers recruiting each other. But in this case, when the expertise of the recruiter is that of the recruiting process, sometimes it's more effective if you give them an opportunity to talk to a physician, so that the peers are talking, right, and not the person managing the process, right?
Okay.
So
Yes.
it's like anything else, right? Like you and I work together because we like each other, and because we complement each other, and because there's all kinds of things that I can learn from you, and vice versa, right? So I'm not recruiting with and working with Applechat per se as I'm working with with Adam and Patrick and the rest of the team, right?
Yeah. So if physicians recruit physicians in marketing positions, should employers be including more testimonials, case studies, or examples of physicians that work there to make
Yeah,
that the number one thing?
I think profiling physicians and the work that they do is definitely a major thing, right? So prime example is I was sitting out with a recruitment committee for a community looking to recruit family docs, and it's a small community, kind of, there's many like it and stuff like that. So it's not a rarity. Like, they don't have the market cornered on work-life balance. However, one of the physicians that I was having dinner with had recently just created a palliative care module for family physicians, and did a grant to get funding to implement this palliative care model. So that's neat. That's different. That's not being done everywhere. That's unique. So marketing that and marketing that creativity goes a long way to create an identity for that community. So I begged her to do a podcast, or to do a blog, or get that information out there, because if someone else is in another community, they may want to talk to her. And
Yeah.
and we look at when we look at the numbers and the metrics and stuff like that as part of the Applechat's recruiting, it takes a good bit of numbers to get to the true number, which is the engagement, right? Like, we know that X number of hits and impressions is going to come down to one hire, right? And I think you have to really find ways to ensure that your message is engaging, and then allows you to get to that peer-to-peer discussion.
Yeah, I think definitely there's some received wisdom that just simply doesn't work anymore. It used to be you could post a job ad and you get applicants. Now you have to tell stories and touch people's hearts a bit more, and showing them other people doing that is certainly going to do it.
Well, at the end of the day, in most cases, we're asking people to move, right? Like, a lot of physician recruitment unless you're in a big city where there's lots of systems and lots of hospitals within a similar commute to each other. In a lot of cases, you're saying, I want you to move from Texas to Oregon, right? Like, we're talking to a physician in Texas about moving to Oregon. So, it's a much bigger ask and requires much greater engagement. So you have to give them the information to make the decision wholeheartedly that requires the action on their behalf.
Yeah.
Right? Like our job is to give them the information so that they are engaged in the process and want to put the effort in to moving to that job or moving to that hospital or moving to that city. Right?
Yeah.
You can't expect someone to look at a job ad and agree to uproot their entire family because of a job ad, right? You guys, Applechat does some great ones, but it's, the goal is to get the initial reach out. Then you have to focus on the engagement that's going to get them to participate in the process. Otherwise, you're just collecting resumes.
Yeah. That's why we've changed some of our ads. They were initially saying, move to Texas for lower taxes and better weather, for example. But that was saying, hey, you person sitting in New York, here's the reasons why you need to move to Texas. And you're listing the reasons without that person technically already having the desire inside them.
Yeah.
We switched it up. So it's, do you want to be closer to your family in Texas? Or, is it a pain to travel with kids to get home to see the grandparents? Trying to get people that already have it in their mind to do it is something that we really want to try and think that
well,
will work better.
it's interesting. Like, we find that it takes between 3 to 5 emails to get a physician engagement. And how we target our emails is each email gives a little bit about the job, a little bit about the community, and a little bit about the organization, right? Well, and then each subsequent email talks about something different. So you're hoping that by the time they see the 3rd, 4th, or 5th email, they've gotten enough information to be engaged, right? Instead of sending this massive, 5-paragraph email that they're not going to read because they don't have the attention span for it. Neither do we. You send small snippets and each time impart a little bit of information so that the collective, by the time they send the 3rd email, is like one of those things something in one of those 3 emails, 4 emails, 5 emails will resonate with them. You can't send the same message 5 times because you might be excluding the thing that resonates with them, right? You mentioned I'm working with a client in Winnipeg in Manitoba, right? I'm looking for people that have some tie to Manitoba because otherwise, if you grew up in Toronto, you're not moving to Manitoba, right? If you grew up in New York, you're probably not moving to Oregon unless some life change happens, like your spouse gets a job or something like that, right? There's usually got to be a reason for the move and a reason to change jobs. So you need to market and have those engagement enough to figure out what that reason is and then remove it. It's not about selling. It's about removing the barriers and the no's, right? Yeah. Figure out the 5 reasons that person doesn't want your job. And if you can remove those 5, then you've got a chance. If you can't, then you move on. Yeah. But it's like some of my clients, I explained to them, I said, there's nobody locally that you're going to recruit, right? So if you're only going to be able to recruit from somewhere else, you really need to put a focus on your relocation package, right? Or you're going to have to pay more than everyone else because that person's not going to take a $20,000 relocation hit just to make the same money somewhere else. Yeah. So you have to look at what the physician wants and needs to make the move and understand if that's something you can. But also understanding that where your talent pool is coming from should dictate what you're offering. Right? Like one of my clients offers temporary housing, right? Because at the end of the day, it's hard to find housing there. So they're like, we have a house. You can stay in the house for a year. And at the end of the year, they'll hopefully have been ingratiated or sooner in the community and they found somewhere else. Right? Yeah. Removing the barriers to make the transition difficult is key in making the transition happen.
I love that. That's a very clippable comment.
Nice.
That's a good truth about physician recruiting. I'm going to recap before we go. So physicians recruit physicians, and you need to remember that whenever you're not only marketing but selling. And it's not so much selling, but it's showing them something that they already want or know, and getting them to connect with an intention that's already there, rather than going in cold and getting someone to move to Alaska from New York. Do you want to add anything, Kevin, before we close off?
The other thing too, I honestly think, is strong content messaging and frequent and repetitive messaging, right? Like, very rarely does somebody answer to the first email. So if you're not creating systems to understand that you're going to have to reach out to them numerous times, you're not going to get them, right? And constant changing messages so that you finally find the one that resonates, and small snippets. These are immensely busy people with a lot of stressful things. The last thing they want to do when they look at